Hey, hey, glad to be with you today. So you may or may not have ever heard of triploid hops. Yes, folks, triploid hops. That's what we're going to talk about. Max Raphael here, tip number 70 from Hops World. Triploid hops. What are they? How do they make them? And what are the advantages? Let's do it. So, this tip is going to be a lot about genetic science, and from a non-genetic scientist, from a non-scientist. But we're going to keep it as simple as possible to try to explain exactly what is a triploid hops. Certain commercial varieties of hops are called triploids. For example, Mount Hood, Crystal, Liberty, and even the new USDA variety, Vista. They're all triploid varieties. And listen, at the end of this video, I'm gonna give you a list of all the triploids I could find published anywhere and everywhere. There's about 20 on the list. I know there's some more. Hope you can add to the list or tell me if I have a couple wrong possibly, but they're definitely published as triploids. So to explain simply what is a triploid is a plant that has 3 sets of chromosomes per cell. Ta-da! Okay, I hope you liked today's tip and hope you watch next week's tip. No. I'm just kidding. That's the simplest way to explain it. But seriously, to explain what a triploid is, we have to start and back up and explain how new hops varieties are made. Hops plants are dioecious. What that means is that they have separate male and female plants. Hops plants actually look identical as they're growing until they start to flower. The flowering parts of the hops plant are what shows its sex, whether it's a male or a female plant. When male hops plants flower, they grow small flowers that hang from stems in bunches. These are typically whitish yellow and are about 1 centimeter in diameter. They typically grow off of the sidearms or main stems where they branch or have leaf nodes. These small flowers hold the male pollen. When a female hops plant flowers, it begins to grow small white hairs in bunches, and these bunches branch from the nodal areas of the plant, and these small bunches or clumps of white hairs are commonly called burrs. Eventually, at the base of these white hairs begin to form a hops cone. These cones start small and start fluffing up. I say fluffing up, start growing out, and when fully grown, a hops cone looks very similar to a tiny new green pine cone in appearance. Eventually, the cone will grow easily up to 1 to 2 inches, depending on the variety. At this stage, the white hairs die off and become more of a reddish brown. To make a new hops variety, pollen must be introduced from a male hops flower to the little white hairs that are going to form a female hops cone. And as this occurs, seeds are created. In nature, this happens mostly by wind. The wind can blow pollen far distances to find a female hops plant and pollinate it. When breeding new hops varieties, male pollen is manually introduced to the female hops plant and them little white hairs. in order to germinate the hops cones to create new seeds and new varieties of hops. This unique mix of DNA from its mother and father will create a brand new variety of hops. Interestingly, the cones of a female hops plant are the only part of any hops plant that's used to make beer. Female cones have lupulin glands that hold the oils that have many of the flavors and bitterness that will define the beer style and will give much of the final taste to the beer. So, seeds inside of hops cones are undesirable except for use in breeding new hops varieties. In general, they are known to give off flavors with their fatty acids that are contained in seeds. So in general, male hops plants and hop seeds are unwanted. Imagine this, all commercial hop plants in every hop yard around the world, 99.9% are all female plants. Okay, so now that we know how new hops varieties are made, we can explain how triploids are made. But to explain triploids, I first have to explain diploids and tetraploids. Well, what? Sorry folks, real science coming up here, okay? There are actually diploids, triploids, and tetraploids in hops and other ploids also, but these three is what we're going to concentrate on. This is a way of describing the number of sets of chromosomes inside each cell of the different plants. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. A diploid hops plant has 2 sets of chromosomes per cell. A triploid has 3 sets of chromosomes per cell, and a tetraploid has 4 sets of chromosomes per cell. But what are diploids and tetraploids? Well, in nature, almost all naturally wild hops varieties are diploids. This includes all wild hops and over 95% of all commercial hops. A tetraploid hops plant is created by chemically treating a diploid hops plant. There are various methods, but basically, a commercial variety of a baby hops plant, many times in vitro, is treated with a chemical which causes mutation at the early stage of reproduction of the cells. This chemical treatment basically prevents the chromosomes from separating at the time of cell division. So, the plant ends up when full grown having double the sets of chromosomes, or 4 sets of chromosomes. Therefore, it is called a tetraploid. So typically, in hops breeding, a diploid male with 2 sets of chromosomes is used to pollinate a tetraploid female with 4 sets of chromosomes. So, can you guess the result? Yes, a triploid with 3 sets of chromosomes per cell. Hoot hoot! But you may ask, why go through all this trouble and bother? Well, there are various reasons why a triploid has advantages over its typical diploid mother plant, and we're going to explain them now. Number 1, by having 3 chromosomes, triploids have a very difficult time replicating. This means that triploids are basically seedless varieties. This has a huge advantage in most hops growing areas of the world, where there are many hops farms near each other and even wild hops plants nearby. I've been to hops farms in the Northeast US, Michigan, Yakima Valley, many countries in Europe. They all had seeds. Most had very few, but some had way too many in my opinion. So seedless hops are a big advantage. Number 2, triploids create more alpha, beta acids and oils than the original diploid mother. Being seedless, triploids generate more lupulin and oils inside the cones. The lupulin glands are typically larger as opposed to the seed production or reproduction that takes place in a typical diploid plant. So number 3, triploids are stronger, healthier, more disease resistant than the original diploid mother. Most of my triploids have extra thick binds, really dark green, larger leaves than the usual plants. My triple pearl is definitely a great example. Huge, healthy, easy to grow plants. Number 4, triploids usually have larger cones than their original diploid mother. This is typical with most triploids. Vista cones, for example, are huge in comparison to its original diploid mother pearl. This helps a lot in picking when you're using certain pickers or especially manually picking. Number 5, seedless cones close quicker than diploid cones. So a triploid cone will not even think about growing seeds, so it really grows and closes up a lot quicker than a diploid that will hang in there with them little white hairs hanging out. And now, the reason this is an advantage, this helps during the burst stage when the cones are very susceptible to downy or powdery mildew. The quicker the cones form and close, the less chance of getting a disease in the cone. And number 6, and the most important, yield, yield, yield. Triploids give higher yields typically than the original diploid mother. For example, the triploid varieties Crystal, Liberty, and Mount Hood all give double the yield when compared to their original diploid mother, Hallertau milterflu. So there you have it, folks. Triploids and all about them. And here is a list that I've accumulated from the internet, from sources, from publications I have, books I've searched everywhere I could find, and there are plenty more out there. The USDA says I've seen publications where they alone have 14 or 15. We only have a handful here. If you know of any others that are definitely triploids, write in the comments below. If there's one here that I have wrong, also write in the comments. But these were definitely published on pretty commercial sites, big time grower and hops breeder and seller sites, not just your little blog. And a lot of these also were on publications, scientific, that I found of research. So if you know of any others, please add to my list. I'm trying to make a more complete list. I haven't seen any really list anywhere. It'd be nice to have one of all the triploid hops out there. Check out this list of triploids. Williamette and Mount Hood, it dominated the market in the United States for years. Galaxy is a real killer hops. Ultra, Liberty, and Crystal, sisters of Mount Hood. Millennium. Then you have USDA Triple Pearl and the brand new Triploid Vista. They're both awesome hops. And jumping over and looking at all the New Zealand hops, Southern Cross, Pacific Gem, and the most expensive hops in the world that I can buy, Nelson Sauvin. But bam! Thanks for being with me for this week's tip, folks. Hope to see you again next time. Put a thumbs up if you liked. Stay tuned for more hops varieties and more tips in general, all about hops. Cheers to life.